time and gather information by talking to family members, we learn a lot about these people, and we can help change them for the better or get them controlled or contained. And I think that's an extremely important skill that I've developed on this job, and it makes me very wary these days. When I go into environments that I'm not familiar with, I'm always looking and listening. There's a wonderful show on television called The Mentalist, where he's not a magician. He can't read minds. He just observes, and by pulling out that information, he's able to solve crimes. And that's what good probation parole officers do. They observe and they listen. They ask probing questions when necessary, and they help learn what's going on.
I think that relating, just being able to relate to somebody, goes hand in hand with what he was saying about a skill. The more skills you have as a person, the better person you are. So the more skills you have as a probation officer, the better probation officer you are. And if what your intent is to help the person, try to keep the way I looked at my job was, my goal first is to keep you out of jail, and everything else that I accomplished is icing on the cake. So you just have to be able to relate to them and adapt, because this guy's situation is totally different from this guy's. So you have to be able to not just, use broad brush. You got to deal with this individual situation. And the way, really, I think the only way you can really do that is just experience. Just do it more often. You can't just kind of start off doing that unless you've had some other kind of background. But so I would say the more skills you have overall, the better. But that, like you said, listening and observing, but relating to the person, I think is key.
Yeah, and one thing about that too was, one of the things I always tried to do, and I would tell them when they came in, that I'll treat you just like I would want to be treated if I was on the other side of the desk, because by the grace of God, I'm on this side, okay? And that's what I tried to do. I would tell them, I may not like what you did, but I will treat you like I would want to be treated. And that's what I tried to do with all the individuals I had on supervision. Now, they may not have worked out real well at times, but that's what I always tried to in dealing with them, that's what I always tried to do, is treat them like I would want to be treated if our roles were reversed.
Was there ever a case you got too attached to?
Yeah, you can do that, especially working juvenile, okay? I had a case where the mother was a prostitute, the dad was gone a lot. They had left their two babies. They were twins, and they were about 2 or 3 years old. They left them under the supervision of a male and female sex offenders. We got a call that they were running around the house. Everybody was nude, and so I responded with a couple of, this is when I was with the police department, I responded with a couple of marked units, and we arrested the two sex offenders, and we took the two kids in custody, turned them over to child services. I wanted to take them home. Two of the cutest little twins you ever saw. And what was really disturbing is the court ended up giving them kids back to their mom and dad. So yeah, that was one that really bothered me as far as working with kids and whatever. But yeah, you can't help but get attached to them. Adults, nah, not so much.
Yes, did get attached. You have to be objective to be effective at your job, but you can't help but deal with somebody on a real level and not get attached.
Some cases I've gotten very attached to because you expend so much effort and time. Sometimes you're the only person in these people's lives that actually spend quality time. How often are you with the person that you actually ask sincerely, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help you? A lot of these people that we deal with have never had any attention given to them. So when you give them a little attention, they give you a tremendous amount back. And even with the thousands of cases I've supervised, I remember so many names over the years because of all the time I've spent with these people. Some succeeded and some not.
All right. My question is just, how many people at one time did you have to supervise? Like in your cases, like the biggest amount at one time?
Well, for me, at the federal level, our caseload was somewhat smaller than what Mike experienced as a state officer. I want to clarify something here. Mike deals with the worst of the worst, okay? At the federal level, we get bad guys too, but we don't get them like the state guys do. We get some really bad guys at the federal level, but the state gets more of them. And that's just the way the system works. You're going to have the state cases, you're going to have more individuals arrested by local law enforcement and prosecuted locally than you are in federal court. So that, as far as, I think I've lost the track on the question. What was the question? Oh, I had my caseload. So my caseload was somewhat smaller than what you would find at the state level. I think for the most part, probably the largest caseload I had was 65 at one time. And, pre-sentence reports take up as much time. You might end up doing 15, 20, 25, 30, depending on what's going on in your division or your district or whatever. You could do a significant number of pre-sentence reports. One of the other things that's changed is pretrial services. Pretrial is similar to probation, where you're doing a background investigation on an individual to determine their suitability to release on bond, and if they have the financial resources to make bond. So if you end up with those individuals on supervision, you could also have a caseload on pretrial, especially if you wear both hats. You could have a caseload of individuals on pretrial as well as a caseload of individuals on probation.
I'll say an average caseload for us was between 50 or 60, but I just want to point out, like when we're dealing with status offenders, which, like I was saying, was kids that won't mind, won't go to school, won't obey everything, we would spend 20% of our time dealing with felons and 80% of our time dealing with those kids that wouldn't mind, because they were, with the people that had come to court and felons, the line was cut and dried. So, this is what you have to do, or this is what's going to happen. But with the other kids, it was a lot involved. So, okay. So about 50 to 60 was our average caseload.
In state probation and parole for adult offenders, there's 16 levels of supervision. The lowest level only requires a one-on-one contact once a year. The highest level, which is for the highest level sex offender, there's 4 levels of sex offenders, requires a contact every other day. So for that reason, an officer who has a caseload of just sex offenders, 30 of them, has a very busy caseload. But we have caseloads separated for the lower levels of supervision, where having as much as 300, 350 cases is okay to deal with when you only got to see them approximately once a year at most. But an average caseload for state probation and parole is running about 180 to 190. Really much too much to deal with. My officers spend a lot of personal time as well as their state paid time working on these cases because they're so devoted to trying to protect the public.
That concludes our discussion for tonight. We thank the audience for their question. We thank our guests, Sammy Nix, Bill Sexton, Mike Wynn. Thank the Criminal Justice Club for sponsoring this event, and the television operation of Northwestern State for hosting us tonight. I'm Jack Atherton. I thank you.